Hello and welcome to this video on The Crucible by Arthur Miller. The Crucible is a play written by Miller in the 1950s, and it's set in Salem, Massachusetts in 1692 during the infamous witch trials. In this video, we'll provide an overview of the play, discuss its historical context, analyze its major themes and characters, and explore the symbolism used throughout the play. Historical context. First, let's talk about the historical context of the Crucible. Salem was a Puritan society, deeply religious and politically tense. There was a lot of fear and anxiety during this time, especially around the possibility of witchcraft. In 1692, a group of young girls started having fits and claiming to be possessed by the devil. This led to accusations of witchcraft and the infamous Salem witch trials, which resulted in the execution of 20 people. Miller used this historical event as a backdrop for his play, but he also used it to comment on the political and social issues of his own time, including the McCarthy hearings and the Red Scare. Miller was himself targeted by the House Un-American Activities Committee for his alleged communist sympathies. Plot summary: The Crucible is set in Salem, Massachusetts in 1692, during the infamous witch trials. The play follows the story of a group of characters caught up in the hysteria of the trials, including John Proctor, his wife Elizabeth, and a group of young girls led by Abigail Williams. Act 1. The play begins in Reverend Parris' home, where he has discovered his daughter, Betty, and several other girls dancing in the forest the night before. He suspects that they were engaging in witchcraft, and he is worried about the potential consequences for his reputation and standing in the community. Abigail, his niece, was also involved in the dancing. She tries to deflect suspicion away from herself by blaming others and accusing Tituba, the Parris slave, of practicing witchcraft. As the accusations spread and more people are accused, tensions rise in the town. John Proctor, farmer, becomes increasingly concerned about the trials and the potential for false accusations. He is also struggling with guilt over his affair with Abigail, who is now using the trials as a way to eliminate Elizabeth, Proctor's wife, from the picture. Act 2. In the second act, the trials are in full swing, and Elizabeth is accused of witchcraft. John Proctor decides to go to the court to try to clear her name, but he is met with resistance from the judges and officials, who are convinced of the guilt of those accused. Proctor also confesses his affair with Abigail in an effort to discredit her, but only further complicates matters. Meanwhile, Reverend Hale, an expert on witchcraft, arrives in Salem to investigate. He initially believes in the validity of the accusations, but as he witnesses the trials and interrogates the accused, he begins to question the fairness and accuracy of the proceedings. Act 3. Tensions continue to escalate, and several of the accused are sentenced to hang. Proctor is given an ultimatum: confess to his affair and sign a false confession of witchcraft, or be hanged. He ultimately chooses to refuse the confession and accept his fate, but not before giving a powerful speech about the importance of individual conscience and integrity. Act 4. In the final act, several months have passed, and the trials are over. Proctor has been hanged, and the community is trying to come to terms with what has happened. Reverend Hale denounces the trials and urges the remaining characters to confess to their part in the hysteria. Elizabeth Proctor, who is pregnant with John's child, is given the opportunity to escape punishment, but she chooses to stay and face the consequences of her actions. Epilogue. The play ends with a note that suggests that the trials were eventually exposed as a sham and the people involved were eventually pardoned. However, the damage has already been done, and the memory of the trials will forever be a stain on the history of Salem. Themes. One of the major themes of the Crucible is the danger of religious extremism. The Puritans were deeply religious, and their fear of sin and the devil led to a kind of moral panic. This panic escalated into the witch trials, where people were accused and convicted based on flimsy evidence and hearsay. The play also explores the power of mass hysteria and the danger of groupthink. The characters in the play are all caught up in the hysteria of the trials, and they find it difficult to think critically or challenge the prevailing narrative. Finally, the Crucible emphasizes the importance of individual conscience. Proctor's struggle to do what's right, even in the face of overwhelming pressure, is a powerful reminder that we must always be true to our own beliefs and values. Characters. John Proctor. John Proctor is a central character in the Crucible and serves as a voice of reason and morality in a community gone mad with hysteria. He is a farmer and husband to Elizabeth Proctor, who is accused of witchcraft. Proctor struggles with guilt over his affair with Abigail Williams, a young girl who is also a key player in the trials. Despite his flaws, Proctor is a man of integrity and refuses to compromise his principles, even at the cost of his own life. Abigail Williams. Abigail Williams is the driving force behind the accusations of witchcraft in Salem. She is a young girl who had an affair with John Proctor and is using the trials as a way to eliminate Elizabeth Proctor and take revenge on John. Abigail is a manipulative and cunning character, willing to go to great lengths to achieve her goals, including accusing innocent people of witchcraft. Despite her evil deeds, Abigail is also a sympathetic character, as she has suffered abuse and neglect in her past. Elizabeth Proctor. Elizabeth Proctor is John Proctor's wife and is accused of witchcraft by Abigail. Elizabeth is a virtuous and honest character, who struggles to forgive John for his affair. Despite the accusations against her, Elizabeth refuses to lie and is willing to accept the consequences of her actions. She represents the strength and resilience of women in a time when their voices were often silenced. Reverend Paris. Reverend Paris is the minister of Salem and is the father of Betty, one of the girls involved in the witchcraft accusations. Paris is a paranoid and insecure character, who is more concerned with his reputation and status than with the well-being of his community. He is quick to believe in the guilt of those accused of witchcraft, as he fears that their actions will reflect poorly on him. Reverend Hale. Reverend Hale is an expert on witchcraft who is called to Salem to investigate the accusations. He is initially convinced of the validity of the trials but begins to question their fairness and accuracy as he witnesses the proceedings. Hale is a complex character, torn between his loyalty to the church and his desire to do what is right. In the end, he denounces the trials and urges the remaining characters to confess to their part in the hysteria. These are just a few of the key characters in the Crucible. Each character is unique and serves a specific role in the story, helping to illustrate the themes and issues explored by the play. Symbolism. Finally, let's talk about the symbolism used in the Crucible. The title is a reference to the crucible, a container used to heat metals to a high temperature in order to purify them. In the play, the crucible represents the intense pressure and heat of the trials, which force the characters to confront their deepest fears and desires. The witch trials themselves are a symbol of the dangers of mass hysteria and groupthink. The puppet, a doll that appears in the play, is a symbol of the power of accusation and the way that innocent objects can be turned into damning evidence in a trial. The forest, where the girls go to dance and perform their rituals, represents the wild and primal forces that the Puritans feared and sought to control. Conclusion. In conclusion, The Crucible is a powerful play that explores important themes and issues that are still relevant today. Through its vivid characters and rich symbolism, Miller reminds us of the dangers of religious extremism, the power of mass hysteria, and the importance of individual conscience. Whether you're reading the play for a class or just for pleasure, The Crucible is a timeless work that will stay with you long after you've finished reading it. Thank you for watching, and I hope this video has helped you better understand this important play.